my loves, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. This is my July reading wrap up. I had a very good reading month in July. I didn't expect to because I was quite busy, and so therefore I didn't get to a lot of the books on my TBR. I am so sorry. I'm going to do better this month. I think I set myself a really ambitious TBR with a lot of like really long books on there. However, I did find some incredible reads this month. I found a few 5-star reads, which I haven't had a 5-star read in such a long time. Honestly, just all my reads were like absolutely amazing this month, and I cannot wait to talk about them. So let's just get started. I read a total of 9 books in July, which I feel like is pretty good for me. 5 of those were fantasy books, 2 of those were thrillers, and 2 of them were like historical crime. So I feel like there was a little bit of variation, but I didn't read any romance this month, which I'm actually surprised with. Usually I need like at least one romance there just to break things up, you know? I started the month with Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is the novella between Powerless and Reckless. I read Powerless a while ago. I did really enjoy it, but it wasn't a favorite. It wasn't like a 5-star read for me. But what I loved about it was the characters. I feel like Lauren Roberts has an incredible way of creating characters. I had put off reading Powerful for such a long time just because I'd seen everyone else read it and like be absolutely bawling their eyes out over it. So I was so nervous going into it, but I finally did it. And I was one of those people. I was absolutely bawling my eyes out. I was shocked about how emotional I got. And the thing is, Powerful takes place on the same timeline as Powerless. And so I know what happens. I know all of the events that happen, and yet it still just completely shocked me and just really took me by surprise. I will say I actually almost preferred these characters over the Powerless characters. I know I don't know. I just feel like these characters had so much more depth to them. And I loved that our main female protagonist wasn't like a amazing FMC. Like, she was a quieter soul, and I personally relate to that a lot more than I relate to like some badass, which we always love a great, amazing, heroic FMC, but also sometimes like the smaller kind of side characters need a bit more representation. So I love that we got her story. Overall, I gave this book a 4.5 stars. I actually loved it. It literally have nothing to fault about it. Obviously it's a novella, so it's going to be very short, very easy to get through, but very emotional. And I feel like I liked this because I wasn't focusing on the plot as much as I was focusing on the characters. And for Powerless, that's kind of the reason I didn't love it too much, because I feel like the plot of Powerless wasn't that original. So focusing on the characters was very nice. And now I am very scared to go into Reckless, but I really liked Powerful a lot more than I thought I was going to. I then read Stalking Jack the Ripper. I went in with very low expectations, and there's a little story behind this book and how I acquired it. I actually bought the 4th book in the series at the beginning, not knowing that it was part of a series, because technically like they don't have any like numbers or anything on them. So I thought it was just a standalone. It sounded super interesting. And then I was like, oh, this is the 4th book. So I was like, okay, have to go back to the start. Anyway, this is a YA historical crime. I don't usually go for historical kind of books, but this really surprised me. All of the books in this series are based off true historical crimes. So for example, Jack the Ripper. However, the characters and kind of plot surrounding it is creative, is fiction, none of it is real. And the characters in this were so great. There's also a little line of romance, which I just feel like balances everything out. There's just such a great balance of like action, mystery, and romance. I literally am obsessed with this series. I could not put this down. I was totally immersed in it the entire time. It did feel quite young, and for that reason I gave it a 4 stars. Like, it wasn't absolutely incredible, but it was just a really fun read. Like, it's just one of those fun, easy reads. I will also say I am terrible with gore, and our main protagonist has the desire to be a forensic body examiner. So basically that means she will examine people who have died and like their cause of death and all that kind of stuff. So for that reason, some of the descriptions were a little too gory for me. But I queeze really easily. Like, apart from that, it was great. I'm a bit queasy. So I gave this book a 4.25 stars. I really liked it. I then read The Locked Door by Freda McFadden just because I needed a quick little thriller. This was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I went in not knowing anything. I've just seen people's ratings on TikTok, and usually this isn't at the top, but I actually really enjoyed it. I was guessing until the end. There was something about it that didn't grip me as much as some of her past books have. So I gave this book a 3 stars. Like, it was enjoyable. It was a quick, easy read. I can't even remember what it was about though, honestly. It was very forgettable. Okay. That's right. It was a bizarre plot. So basically we are following our protagonist whose father has been convicted of multiple women. So it's a very dark kind of premise to the plot, and obviously she's going to be pretty scarred from that. Her father is in jail, but then all these things start happening, mimicking his events, mimicking his actions from 11 years ago or something like that. And our main protagonist, Nora, starts to freak out and starts to think like, is somebody framing her, all that kind of stuff. It is really interesting, and I feel like it's a really good premise. I just wasn't as hooked as I thought I could have been. So yes, a 3 stars for this one. I then read Dracora. This is the 3rd book in the Madoran Chronicles by Lynette Noni. I have been obsessed with this series. It is a YA fantasy series. We set at a magic school and we are following our main protagonist, Alex. She doesn't know that she has like magical abilities, and she kind of gets put in this school and has to match everyone's pace whilst they've been training their magic since they were really very little. It's very like Harry Potter vibes. Like if you love Harry Potter, you will love this, although it has a little bit more like fairy magic and a few more mythical creatures and all of that kind of stuff. I feel like there's a little bit more action, and we're not necessarily just set at the school. Like we go beyond the school, which is a little bit nice. There's also an amazing sense of found family in this. Like the characters in this, I just love. They kind of feel like I know them by now, and this was really, really good. For a lot of it, I was there going, okay, like it's entertaining, but why am I reading about this? Obviously, I'm not going to tell you the plot of this one because it's the 3rd one, but so much has happened since the 1st book. And then at the ending, everything comes together. Like everything just falls into place. It was so satisfying. It was such a great read. I gave this a 4.75 stars. It was that good. Like I was obsessed with it. I could not put it down. I was just, oh my gosh. I highly, highly recommend this series if you haven't heard of it or if you haven't read it before. If you're just a fan of like YA fantasy series and love a good magic school like I do, because if there's a magic school mentioned, I'm going to be reading it. Those are the rules. I then read Want to Know a Secret, again by Freda McFadden. This one actually surprised me. I did not think I was going to be liking this one, but I really liked it in the end. This is set around like suburban housewives, and for some reason, that kind of premise in a thriller book always draws me in. I will always be reading it if it's like rich drama. I'm obsessed with it. I don't know why. But basically our main protagonist has like a cooking show on YouTube, and that's kind of her job. She's a housewife, but she'll also like do these cooking shows on YouTube. And she has a dark past, but we don't really know a lot about that. Like we figure it out as we go. She then starts getting like harassed with these anonymous texts, and all this weird stuff starts happening, and people start to frame her, and her friend group starts falling apart around her. It is so good. I am obsessed with like rich people drama, and in a thriller form, I'm going to love it. I'm going to love it. I don't know why, but it's addictive for me. So I gave this book a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I didn't guess the plot twist. I feel like the ending shocked me. Yeah, I recommend it if you need a quick, fast-paced thriller. Like, it will keep you hooked. I've then moved on to Hunting Prince Dracula. This is the 2nd book to the Jack the Ripper series that I started at the beginning of this month. And this book did not disappoint. It didn't have 2nd book syndrome. It didn't fall apart. It was so, so good. We are following the same characters in this book, but they have gone to an academy in Russia to continue their studies on forensic examining. The vibes for this were amazing. I was reading this when it was like dreary and cold outside. It was the perfect atmosphere to be reading this. Again, we are based off a historical crime that has fiction and like creative freedom taken on it. And I am just obsessed with these characters. Like, this was so good. I cannot wait to continue the rest of this series. This one was definitely a little bit longer, but I feel like it needed to be that bit longer. This series is so much fun. Like, I highly recommend it. Technically could read these books as standalones, but I just feel like it makes the reading experience so much better to start from the beginning, because then you get to know the characters, you get to know what you're talking about, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. Again, the series is just so fun. If you need a fun, addictive read this. I then read Spark of the Everflame. This is a romantic book and I am literally obsessed with it. Straight off the bat, this was a 5-star read. Like, as soon as I kind of got through the first few chapters, I just got that vibe that just like was making me giddy. It was making me just want to not stop reading it and immerse myself in this world. There was something about it that just I couldn't stop thinking about, which is just the best feeling in a romantic book. I don't think I've felt that since I read like Akatar for the first time or something when I was very young. It was the best feeling. Basically, in this world, we have the mortals and the descended. Mortals are obviously kind of ruled over by the descended, who are people with magical abilities, and they kind of have the kingdom, and there's always been this big divide between them. Our main protagonist is a healer, which straight away, again, we love, like an underrated MFC. And she kind of falls in contact with the prince of the descended, Luther. Luther is my new favorite book boyfriend. I am obsessed with him. I think he is amazing. Can I just say the tension in this book was insane. Like, if you like Powerless for the banter and the tension, read this book. There was just something that just like kept you gripped the entire time. And like the interactions were so small, but they were so powerful. Like, they just had you like smiling and giving you butterflies, and oh my gosh. This is an enemies to lovers romance, which is the best in a fantasy setting. And the ending of this blew me away, and I really, really like cannot wait to continue this series. I am just obsessed with it and I really, really highly recommend it. And I believe this is also getting traditionally published in September. Again, I am very excited about. At the moment it is on Kindle Unlimited though, so you have no excuse to not read it. I'm obsessed with this series. Easiest 5 stars I have given out. I then read Immortal Dark by Tigist Germer, I think you pronounce it, but correct me if I'm wrong. I received this arc from Hachette. I believe this comes out in September this year. This is a gothic fantasy set at a vampire academy. So immediately I was very drawn into it, although I am not the biggest fan of gothic fantasy, which I feel like very much interrupted my perception of this book. However, I did have a very good time reading it. I was enjoying it the entire time. It did get very dark towards the end, and like there were some big plot twists that you just didn't expect to happen. And it was very addictive. Like I couldn't put it down. But I'm just not a big gothic girl. Like I just don't love the setting of it. I don't love the way it makes me feel when I'm reading it, if that makes sense. Don't get me wrong, this was still a 4 stars. It was still a like great easy read. But the reason it wasn't a 5 stars, I think it's just because I didn't connect to the characters as much. I didn't connect to the setting. But for a premise of this book, our main protagonist's sister has gone missing. And it is kind of believed that her own sister, which is not true, and she's trying to prove that. But to prove that, she needs this one piece of evidence that she doesn't think people actually believe unless she's under certain circumstances. Then her aunt passes away and leaves this house to her. It is a magical house and she's allowed to inherit this house as long as she attends the academy. Vampire Academy. She is immortal. She is attending a vampire academy. This is an enemies to lovers, although it is kind of a bullying enemies to lovers, which I don't love. And again, one of the reasons it wasn't a 5 stars for me, but the story as a whole was really interesting. I do think if you love gothic fantasy, you will love this. And it's set at an academy. I feel like that is just like the best vibes. The last book I read in July absolutely blew me away, and this was by far my favorite read of the month. And that is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I have been putting off this book for such a long time, and when I tell you I was downright obsessed with it from the first chapter. There is something about the way Olivia Blake writes, the way she creates characters, that is just so addictive and beautiful. This was a literary masterpiece. I literally annotated it like crazy. This is the first book like I felt the need to put notes in whilst I was reading it. For example, these characters were just absolutely amazing. The emotional journey I went on this was insane. I felt every emotion possible. I just love the way Olivia Blake writes and creates a world. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, so initially that kind of threw me off it, and it's why I didn't read it immediately, but oh my god, do not let that throw you off it like it threw me off. It is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but with witches. We are set in a world with witches and with magic and with fae. It is so much fun. Basically, both of our families, obviously we have 2 separate families that are mortal enemies. They both own like antique stores that also possess like magical artifacts and all that kind of stuff and potions. And they have kind of been at war with one another for unseen circumstances at the beginning of the book at least. Our 2 younger siblings from these families meet and they fall in love instantly, except the chemistry between these 2 is amazing. The banter between these 2 is incredible. Like I feel like I know them. When you're reading this, you feel like you can hear them talking. There is something about the way that she writes that you just, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely obsessed with this. This was a 6-star read. I give 6-star ratings so rarely. Basically, that just means I feel like it was too good to be a 5-star read. Like it is leagues above my other 5-star reads. I'm obsessed with it and cannot stop thinking about it. Cannot stop thinking about the characters. Yeah, a 6-star read happens very, very rarely for me, but this was one. This was absolutely beautiful, and I highly, highly recommend it. And those were all the books I read in the month of July. I cannot believe how successful it was. I just had the best time reading. I'm so excited for my August reads. I have such a good lineup. I hope your reading month was great and you had a good few reads. Let me know your favorite below if you have watched till this far, and if you have, I love you so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.